Are safe places for women and children becoming extinct? If you live in a country like Canada, where just simply raising concerns about that issue can get you labeled as a bigot or spreader of hate, it seems to be a fair question.
Good. For the time being, I shall require only women and children.
Remember when it was so honorable to put the safety of women and children above everything else? Is that starting to fade? It's hard not to ask that question when you have high school students who are supposed to be learning something in shop class from a teacher who has prosthetic, protruding nipples through a sheer shirt, a dress code that they themselves couldn't get away with. Or what about a male-bodied individual who's walking back and forth completely naked in a change room where children just finished their swimming lessons? Is that something we're allowed to be concerned about these days? Today, I bring you an interview with a Nanaimo, BC mother named Drea Wright. Drea made her rounds on social media after raising attention to something very concerning. She claims that she saw an individual with a wig on bend down and try to take a peep under the stall in the Nanaimo Aquatic Center change room at a 9-year-old girl. And then when she tried to say, "Hey, don't do that," she was told, "It's my right to be in here." You're not going to want to miss this interview.
So on Friday, February 3rd, I had taken my daughter and my best friend's daughter, my niece, to the pool swimming. I had been warned by a Facebook post by another mother to not allow your children to go into the change room unattended because there was this sort of predator behavior happening over the span of the 2 weeks kind of prior to this incident occurring. So that day I decided to accompany them into the women's locker room, at which time 3 people came in, one of which was wearing a wig and had a face mask covering. I got my daughters into the change room, into the changing stalls. And then I watched as this person had peculiar behavior. They were loitering around the room. They didn't have a bag, which would indicate they were going to use the facility or towel, anything like that. They were walking down to the shower, kind of walking around. Then they walked past me and they went into the stall, one over in the same row as my daughter. And we're kind of pacing around. Of course, you can see people's feet because they don't go right to the ground. And then I saw their wig as they tried to peer underneath the stall. At that time, I asked the other individual who walked in with them if this person was with them. Told me no. When they came out, I then obviously confronted them. They said that it was within their human right to be in there. And I wasn't having that because my daughter has rights and this is a safety concern. So I ushered out the door.
Yeah, we don't have a human right to peep on children in a change room. That's not a human right. So my goodness, this is, a nightmare for most parents. You go out and you go to the aquatic center staff and you let them know what happens. And then what happens?
I was at about a level 30 when I was talking, as most parents could understand. They did tell me that it was within their human right to be in that change room. But, they didn't, they weren't happy that the person was peeking under the stall and they would be looking into that.
Yeah. And so I've reached out to them as well. I haven't heard back yet, but if I do, I will tag on that information at the very end of this report. Or if it's been a couple of days, you can also check out the written report, which is linked in the description below. But I'm just trying to wrap my head around this situation because in the past, there have been people who have, in particular men, who have been caught peeping in change rooms and things like that. Usually they go into the family room. And then right away, usually they end up being banned. Have you been informed anything about whether or not, while the Aquatic Center is investigating this issue, or the police, whether or not they have banned this individual out of concerns of safety for other kids?
No, I actually haven't even heard from the Aquatic Center at all. since the incident occurred. I have heard from our mayor, and obviously I did create a police file that evening. So, the police have been in touch with me in regards to this, and I know many other parents who witnessed this behavior from this individual in the weeks leading up. They also have gone to the police with their stories and added onto my police file. So,
well, I'm glad you brought this forward to the police. It's, of course, a big concern there. Do you feel like they are handling the situation well? And are you in contact with any of the other parents that you say have made complaints in the past?
Of course, they've all reached out to me, but I have been reached out by a number of people who, have my support in this issue. And you know what, I think the police are doing the best that they can, given the circumstances. And of course, it's very political. So.
Yeah, unfortunately, this has become a political issue. I'm not sure why. You're bravely telling your story. It's one thing to tell the police. It's another to go ahead and make sure the public knows, which I think is of great importance. How else are people going to be on extra guard? Like you said, you knew to go in ahead of time to make sure your kid would be safe because of other people who have said things. I think it was on Facebook. But how is the community responding to you speaking out? Is it, was the mayor positive? Are the people around you online being positive? Is there any backlash? Because for some reason, this is sort of a political issue.
I would say 95% of people have been in support of me. Of course, you are going to have people that are taking this out of context and taking the things that I've said out of context. But, I've had a great public response. There was about 100 people that showed up with me on Sunday afternoon with less than 24 hours notice. I think I put out a post on Facebook at about 8 or 9 p.m. Saturday night asking people to come and stand with me and join me as I did my interview for Check TV. And by 1:30 the next day, there was about 100 people coming out and standing in support with me. So that's great. Yeah, I was overwhelmed.
Now, there always seems to be a small percentage of people, sometimes a very loud percentage of people that call certain concerns around this area of safe spaces for children and women, transphobic.
With the incident leading to a growing number of online threats and attacks against the trans community, the Nanaimo Pride Society has issued a statement saying, "We simply can't know right now whether this alleged offender is trans in the early stages of transition, or a man looking for loopholes, or a bad actor using a common fear as a lightning rod to create an anti-trans mob." It goes on to say, it condemns malicious predatory behavior, no matter who the perpetrator is.
How would you address those types of claims?
I'm not transphobic. This has nothing to do with gender for myself. This has to do with a safety concern for our children. And that is the point that I'm trying to drive home to everybody. So, you know what, again, if people want to jumble my words around, then that's on them, because I never once have mentioned anything about this being a gender issue. So,
well, pedophiles can come in all sexes. I'm certainly not saying this individual is a pedophile. We don't know much about this person other than your statements here, and I will continue to follow the story. Thank you so much for speaking out. Is there any last words you wanted to share about this situation?
Well, I just want parents to be diligent and parents to stand up, because unfortunately this is a much bigger issue. And I don't want to see any children fall victim to this kind of predator behavior. So I think we as a community, as a country, we need to stand up and we need to put a stop to this. We need to find safe spaces for everyone. With the legislation that's in place at this moment, unfortunately, it isn't protecting our children. So we definitely need to come up with a solution.
Yeah, and I was actually going to wrap it up, but you just made me think of one more question I think people would want to know, which is, how is your child and niece doing with this situation?
Oh, they're fine. They're totally fine. They're like, they're like, yeah, my mom had my back, and nice. It honestly, it hasn't affected them. They know that I will go to any length, like any parent would, to protect them. So yeah, fine.
Well, thank God you were in the room with them. And thanks for being on Rebel News.
Thank you so much.
After interviewing Janaea, I did hear back from the RCMP. A Constable O'Brien tells me that there were 2 complaints made to them. Both were investigated. However, one was determined to be baseless. The individual seen in the washroom has not yet been identified and has not yet been spoken to by investigators, but they are still attempting to locate and identify this individual. Don't be bullied out of standing up for the protection of women and children. Instead, take action. Go to our special website called protectthestudents.ca and send an email to the Halton School Board District to tell them you want their teachers to have a proper dress code just like their students do. Again, that is protectthestudents.ca.